Is Pavel Aleshkevich. I'll be talking about Java in Domino, and I'll be saying that this is not scary. From the very beginning, I want to say that my report will be kind of a digest because there's a lot of scarce information across the internet. Sometimes it's very difficult to get to what you actually need. So this will be the main topic of my discussion today. And now I'm switching off my video because it is not very useful and convenient to stream from my smartphone. Briefly about myself. Currently, I'm working at Rostelecom. Last year, I was also a speaker at RNUG. I'm also an HCL ambassador. I'm a developer in Domino since 2007. I have an email, I have a work mail. I don't have my own website. I also have a special Telegram chat, and you can also see the link to the codeby.net. Those who are specializing that probably know about it. So, JVM in Domino, those are quite different because this is not Oracle, this is not Adobe, this is a separate JVM that was finalized. For the versions 9 and 10, IBM produced their own J9. And so in versions 9 and 10, we see this version of the Java JDK 8U15IB12. And if we're talking about Domino 11 Plus, then you can see the last line in here that is the link to that. So each of the patches of JVM actually adjust the security and safety. So please take a look at the changes and amendments that are published. That's the way you will always be available to understand whether your JVM is somehow sensitive or not. Next, well, a lot of developers are scared of Java, and so what can it produce to us? This is an element UI design that cannot be done in client. That's true. Lotus Client is quite limited when it comes to the capabilities of interaction, so a lot of things have to be redeveloped. Then, this is about integration with external systems, JDBC, HTTP, SFTP, FTP, etc. If you have Linux, then you'll have some problems with that. Well, if you have Windows, it's easier. And in this respect, JDBC driver will help you. And you'll be able to send data to the external systems. Third here is about the generation of reports in Excel without Excel. You can use Apache Poi, Aspos, etc. They're quite different when it comes to the functions and limitations as well. Please read the patch notes. Then we have a comprehensive system when it comes to the inheritance, compiling, etc. Then we have the multi-flow process. Lotus script is the one flow language. You cannot start two flows at the same time. And in Java, you can do that just out of the box. But that's very dangerous. Then we can also use the ready external libraries, so for HTTP, SVTP, FTP, etc. You can manage strings, for example, patch strings or common leads. You can also send some requests from Dde Setup, for example. You can work with data. At some point of time, we had some special libraries, but later on, I will elaborate on that. We also have OSGI, Domino Tasklets, thanks to Java, and this is another level. And it also allows us to have Java Server add-in. This is at the level of Lotus that is launched with it, or it is started in a separate flow. This is the similarity of HTTP replicators, etc., that can be written by ourselves. You can write them on CME or on Java as well. So a very simple example for UI elements. This is about the dialog to choose with the filtration. Now I'll show you how it's done. Here, what I will do from the very beginning. I'd like to show you the generation of these elements. I found this agent on the internet, and then I'll add all these links. Here we can see just the names. Now let's generate them. For example, let's imagine we have 100 people. So this is the window, log window. This is a Java application. This is not this link that just draws the results. So we have some pause here because sometimes it happens too fast, and the pause for me here is 50 milliseconds. So everything has been generated. Now let's take a look at all the new elements that we've got just renewed. Now let's take a look at the progress bar. Let's count all the documents. That's how it works. We have all 100 documents. We can see the process, then we can cancel it, and it'll be stopped without any errors. We can restart it once again. This is one of the elements. So if you have a kind of interactive listing, if you are working with client and with reports, then you can also see the progress. And if user decides that you don't need that, then you can finalize all this without any problems. So now we do the select dialog. This is our preview. This is the Java dialog. This is quite similar to pick list, but there is one small nuance, so to say. It is filtered. So you can have a large bunch of data, and you can then search for that. That's how it works. I press OK, and then in the same console, I see what is happening. And now I can insert it in the document. How does it look in design? Well, this is the generation of names. What did I do? I created a special Java session. ls2j, this is one of the advantages. We can get it from Java Lotus script. We announce the class, methods, errors. We take one class. We have a package. This is an author of this simple console application, and that's how and why I should actually indicate the root. In other cases, I would not have to do that. And now I'm working with the console as just an external object. So we have sleep 0.1. And afterwards, I'll just put all done. So I don't delete anything. It is deleted by itself. As to the recalculation, NSF tools, well, we have such kind of a classic option, two options for Java and for Lotus scripts, ls2j. I believe that Julian Robiner written it, if I'm not mistaken. And it produces these kinds of things. So that's how it looks like with cancel. So with iteration, each time we check that we have cancel. If it is there, then we leave the loop, and afterwards the progress bar is deleted. We have a special destructor that deletes Java objects. And we have the select dialog as well. This is fully done on Java. This is a dialog. This is its class. Then it should be closed by default. And here you can see all the texts. So you cannot change sizes. You should have all these tables, filter table as well. And this is about the advantage that we have. Usually, filter table is not done. This is the class from JScroll panel. So with a big number of users, you should have some scrolls. So this is an advantage. There are some ready things, and you can add your own things to those. And a lot of developers actually develop their own data, hash maps, hash lists, etc. So here you can see the filtering with the regexpo thanks to the field. If I had a couple of fields, then I could use each of them. And this is the OK processing. Here I get the data. While I was a little bit tricky, I used Dust to make it all look quite fast. So I adjusted it, and I've got 100 values. So I was a little bit tricky over there because by default, Dust gives us 10. And I've forgotten, for example, the setup that gives us all 100 lists. And I didn't want to do that, so I was a little bit tricky about that. So what's most important here is I get all these results. From DAS, I got the JSON, and with an external library, which is not in this internal library, I'll show you what I mean. This is not included in the agent. This is not in here as an external Java. And in simple console, this is also absent. So I'll show you how it should be done. That's quite interesting as well. So with the JSON, I reconfigured my list type name. This is quite simple one, to string. After that, I fill in this modal, and that's probably it. Afterwards, in the agent, I can do like this, and I will get this modal. Well, it's quite difficult to work with this special table because from each of the strings, lines, elements, I have to gather this data. This is not that user-friendly, so to say, when you have a lot of fields, for example. But if you have just a few, if you need to filter by user or by number of document, then it is quite fitting. And now we move on. About the integrations, as I said, you can use a JDBC for the connection with other drivers, Oracle, Postgres, SQL, H2, etc. And so if you want to, you can also generate a Java class proceeding from SDL. Well, we have a lot of options here. You get OSDL. This is a SOAP web service, and you can generate the class model over there. And then you should also have the call point where it is generated. And that's how you can configure the client part to be connected to the service, as well as the server part to get the connections from the users. So it's very useful and convenient. And since it's Java, then it's getting even more interesting. Then REST services, well, JSON, Jackson can be used, simple JSON can be used. A lot of different libraries can be implemented here. And we can also work with the local Tomcat. And at Code.by forum, within the Telegram chat that I indicated in the beginning of this presentation, I actually said that you can install Tomcat to the local machine, and through the client and through the HTTP, you can transfer parameters, and it will do some Java work that takes a lot of time on Lotus, or maybe you just don't want to load the server. So this Tomcat will be connected to a server to get the data, and then it will process everything inside, and the user will just get a result. This is a very interesting solution. Unfortunately, I haven't tested it, but I know the author, so we'll definitely try to test it with him. Reports generation. Well, Lotus is not the system where the reports should be generated, to be very sincere. If you have some simple reports, well, that's okay. But if you have to consolidate your report from different databases, this compiling, these calculations, well, those should be avoided. You should get a separate system that can build all these reports and data. You should explain to the system what is what, how it's all processed, and then the system can be working with that. And you can also transfer data within some periods of time. Well, usually, only 5% of cases require some reports. In most cases, those are historical data, and well, those are not that important. Then, starting with the version 11.01, we have Apache Poi. Now it is added to the client libraries. And if you use POI in your solutions, then you have a conflict in your development because on default, those designs are now added, and you'll have a conflict if you have an old version of a POI. Well, we have POI 3.17 in one of our projects, and when we transfer to the 11th client, we have two developers that are dealing with that. It turned out that they were in conflict, and we got back to the POI version. And as a result, we had to rewrite some things, and it's quite laborious, so to say. But you should be monitoring the versions of the libraries every time, from time to time. Then the comprehensive interfaces and multi flows. Well, you should not be building your classes around nodes, domino objects. You should use these Lotus objects only to fill in the initial model, and afterwards you will be working with the model. This is a business-oriented objects, as we call them. Well, that's indeed very important. Why? Because data leaks is one of the flows and gaps in Java and Lotus. Then multi-channel or multi-flow model. Well, a lot of complexities are present here. What I mean is that you need to understand what you are doing. If you don't understand that, you'd better not start. This is fitting not for all the tasks. It can accelerate work with the file systems, for example, reading files and uploading, downloading, but you should not be working with databases over there, because for that you would need a connection pool. And if you use only one flow with your databases, then, well, the multi-channel, multi-flow system will not help you. Well, you can actually start 3 agents from one. So you have, for example, a service executor, you have some separate tasks for it, and then you call this task from the agent. Agent starts and launches, and then it starts 3 flows, and each of the flows starts its own agent. And this main agent is waiting until each of the agents will finalize its tasks. If some of the agents is somehow frozen, then all the other agents will be frozen as well. And I've written here that this is a weapon of mass destruction. Why do I call it like this? Because you can just break down the servers very easily. So either you should connect to professionals, I mean those who are working with Java and with multi-flow systems, because they can be lacking some Lotus experience, but they'll definitely be having some experience with multi-flows. This is the bedrock. As to the ready and not ready external libraries, for the server and for the client, those libraries should be on the machine, on-prem. Well, it could be in JVM libext up to version 9.01 FP4 or 6. Well, when the server is updated, that folder was somehow hidden, deleted. So all the libraries were going away. You had to get the backup for that. I installed the 10th and the 11th versions. I updated my fixed packs, and they are there, so they're not disappearing anymore. So either that was fixed somehow, but I don't have any proof, but in any case, you can do backup. Well, sometimes you should not be using JavaWebEx. For that, we have nodes ini, Java user classes ext. I'll show you how it works. I have it somewhere over here. Just give me a second. So this is my client. I hope you can see it well. I have 4 libraries connected. They are in another folder. Those are the names, and I've connected it through this setting, through this path. So nodes in actually has some limitations to 0.56 lines. Well, that's probably better, right? You can see it now better. Okay, so since we have 256 lines, you can use such variables, and this simplifies to some extent not the change but the number of the connected libraries. You can just get all these libraries in one jar for 1 or some more megabytes, and everything will be working quite okay. Then for some libraries, JDBC Oracle, for UI elements, you need to adjust the Java policy file. This file is on the server and on the client, and it is in JVM lib security. And a user can also lack some rights for that, but there is a solution to that. Let's see. This is Java policy file, this one with changes. I needed those changes for the dialog. Always on top, this is prohibited. You need to address that. Data converter and set context class loader. Sometimes you would also need that. And this element that I'm talking about is in user profile. Give me some seconds. That's what I was looking for, Java policy. I'll open it, and yeah, that's what I need. Why do we need that? A user can always have access to this folder. He or she can write in here, read and delete. So theoretically speaking, this file, well, most importantly, it should start with a dot, right? You see it, .java policy. So we can use policy here, Marvel client in here. There's such an option as well. When you start a database, you can also create it. This is also possible. It can be just as a document in some database, and you can export it to a lot of scripts. You will have to reopen a client, unfortunately, but that's not such a big deal, right? And these permissions will not be required anymore. Next, as to the external libraries hazards and dangers, if those external libraries have some data leaks, then you also have it. And so you cannot change the library as well. Some libraries are protected by copyright. So either you should write to vendor or to the open source community if you have an open source library. And if you don't have an opportunity to edit the code, and if you do have the opportunity to edit it, then you have to get your own version. You should have commit pull request to get it to the main branch. And if you did something wrong, then it will be indicated separately. So it's very important to be monitoring the versions of the libraries with Java is supported, what errors have been addressed there, and what has been changed just in general. You could have a JAHL, so to say, as I call it. This is one of the problems of Java libraries. When you have a couple of them from different vendors and they're executing different functions, but inside they're using the same library but from different versions. And, well, which one will be uploaded at specific period of time, this is very difficult to forecast. Well, usually that is the first one, will be uploaded. And then these classes will be captured. And so if the first library was an old one, then the second library will not be working because it is referring to the methods of an outdated class. Well, open source problem with external libraries is the following. Some people just abandoning some projects. For some period of time, it is live and it is maintained, but at this specific point of time, there are no changes, there are no commitments, nothing is happening there. And the errors that have been addressed there, they are not addressed anymore. And the project is just dying. This is a life cycle of an open source, quite usual one, especially if it was just proceeding from the enthusiastic efforts of somebody. And after that, you either need to change the library or you have to live with this old version and to adapt it by yourself if you have this opportunity. There's also a vendor problem. Well, there could be some solution and it is, for example, available for some fee, but the company is or goes bankrupt and the solution is not sold. And in this case, either you have to live with an old version or you have to do something else. Well, you can also infringe the law and decompile the library, or you can monitor how it behaves. You can draw conclusions how it should be working, and you can just write it from ground zero by yourselves, but this is quite a work to do. As to OSGI and dots. OSGI, this is another level of development. Those are started in another example. Those are quite similar, but GVM is not connected to HTTP, so it's quite complicated. As to the 10th and the 11th version of Domino, we had some Domino tasklets. And in the 9th version, if you'd like to use them, you had to also install the open source component. And in the 11th version, it was just eliminated. Why? Because somebody believed that it is not used so much. But as far as I understood, it could be appearing in the version 12, but we'll be seeing what will be going on. As to OSGI, well, this is coming from Java indeed, but it allows you to have plugins. UI plugins for client and server plugins as well, and you can develop them and implement them based on the update sites. So each plugin can be implemented and deployed regardless of other ones. So you can stop and restart the machine, HTTP task, and then you'll get the new example of that. You can also get to the console the example that you need. First the old one, then the new one. Depends on what you would require. Why is it helpful? Because those are isolated containers. You can also get some microservices for them, as far as I believe, and you have the full Java development. You write plugins, you update them, you just log it to the website, and then OSGIs are abreast. So we can do it through HTTP, we can get responses, and this is an independent model. So this is Java on Domino. And this Java should not be working with Domino objects. It can also be working with external objects. For example, you don't have a separate application server where you can deploy it. And that's how you can do it from OSGI and Domino tasklets. Well, there is a very good presentation that explains it in details. I'll get the link to this presentation, and I'll also provide some more information because they describe it quite well. I tried to have Domino tasklet for the version 11 and it didn't work for me, but it turned out that those were deleted. Then the server add-in. As I said, this is an analog of the server task, and this is a separate example of a GVM that is started on Lotus. If you are aware about Domino DDM monitoring, then there are some tasks. You can address the disk, the memory, the network, test, etc. And so it is all started with a RM evaluation. And in the 10th version or in the 11th version, it was quite broken down, and a lot of people were just recommended to switch those elements off. There is a Java Toolkit project. It was done by one person. I actually forgotten what his name and surname is. Well, I have the link. I'm very sorry for that. We need to know our heroes, but still there is a link to that. So this person developed a toolkit that allows to develop J add-ins quite fast. So you just connect two classes, you inherit these two classes, and then you can just be writing your logic, because everything that is needed at the level of the server, at the technical level, that's all done in those two classes, so you don't need to add anything. And at codeby.net, there is one participant of the forum, and this participant, with the help of this toolkit, wrote a small monitoring of the memory and the processor upload. And so he can get these statistics in Zabbix. He needed that, he tried it, he succeeded. It's quite interesting. I've also done it for myself. I started it on my server, but I can say that on Windows, we have some error. Either it is connected to the code or to the sizes, because initially it was done for Linux. And when it comes to Windows, there are some mistakes and errors. My CPU is not that working well, so to say. But those are currently my original settings up. But I believe that it's very interesting, and later on I'll show you my example that I've done for myself. Then Java 8. Java 8 was absent in Domino for a long period of time, and in version 9.01 FP8 it is available. And on clients it is only for 9.01 FP10. And before that, there were a lot of limitations in the previous Java version. The libraries were not working well at all. You couldn't use some external libraries. If you would like to, you had to downgrade your versions. You had some data leaks, and you had to live with them. But the 9 version FP8 and 10 is available, so it will be working all right. And you can be quite successful with that. In Java 8, There are some lambdas, streams, optional, new Java data time classes, and more. As to the LANs, well, I've used it in here. You can see it now on my screen. This is an action listener. It has an argument, and then we have this LANs. I used it somewhere else, so I'll try to get it for you right now. I have my test agent. I haven't finalized it so far. Actually, I have both streams and lambs and everything. Just give me a second. I also have optionals. Well, optional is another type of data. It allows us to operate such elements as often label as present, etc. What is the advantage? You shouldn't be checking whether it's a new object or not. I'll show you. Just give me a second. I wanted to zoom it in, but it will take me quite a lot of time, so let's live with this. So you can claim the optional class, you can have the offer label, and you can get this task for it by unit. And if unit is okay, 32 symbols, because 31 symbol is exception. If you have 32 units in here, then you'll get something in here. And so if there is no document by such a unit, then there'll be no, but if there is a document, then you'll get some kind of this. Then we also have if present method. It's an internal Java present. This is for optional objects. Well, it says that if this object is available, then you can use it in here with the consumer. And if this object is not available, then this method will not be executed. And the lambda in here, we have unit variable in here. So it will be just the object that is inside the optional. This could be any variable with just another name. Well, I called it unit because I have system out print unit get universal ID. So this is in exchange for Lotus document. So I get universal ID in here, and I can just type in freely. As to streams, from this document, which is optional for us, we can get all the items and we can transform it in a mass of data to array, and we'll get a list. So we can get to string. We'll get all the IDs. But for example, we need to filter by some kind of a feature. For example, we don't need to filter by update by $conflict, something like this, $ref. And what can you do in here? You could get the same items with a split with a comma, because we need the names. Indeed, here we'll have a name and the value separated by a comma. So we start our stream. We say, well, get us a map. This is an element inside this item's name. We'll get the lambda in here. If you have so if you have $, then return. If you don't have, then return null. Then we have skip to count, and we'll get a size finally. So this whole line is about items with $, right, with the number of the system fields. So those examples are very simple. I'm not very accustomed to that. I've read about that, but I don't know how to comprehensively use it for Domino. If we talk about new data time classes, while I don't understand how to do it, we'll have some kind of we'll get some kind of advantages and simplified process. Then if we talk about lambda and stream with optional, for me, it's quite difficult to see it with Lotus objects, because the example that I've shown you, this is not quite a working one. You will not get such tasks in life. While optional, you'll probably be able to use that. You'll probably have some function that can return the documents. Indeed, it can help you. But as to lambda, Well, at some point of time, somewhere you can use it, but in general, well, not that useful. And as to stream, I don't think that it is a working one. And if we talk about business-oriented objects and models, it all works quite well. On the internet, you can find a lot of examples. I have a separate PDF file consisting of 50 or 52 pages, and for each of the elements of Java 8, how it works, what it is, why is it organized like that, and how it can help you. So it will all be added to the finalized version. And let's not forget about data leaks on Java. Well, there are some standard ones. It is connected to Java machine itself, not to Lotus. Those are static fields. When we have some hard links and garbage collector cannot collect those fields. For example, hash map object, it's a static one, and it's there and it's hanging, and when this example is in the memory, it will not be out of it. And the second source are the unclosed resources, IO, JDBC connections. Prepare statements. All this should be closed. This can produce a large data leak as well. Then, when we talk about some kind of implementations proceeding from the hash map or from list, and you would like to get objects, additional objects there, well, it will be a huge mistake if you don't have equals and hash code implementations. Why? Because the structures based on hash should not be working, and they can be working quite improperly. And you need equals and hash codes to avoid any future mistakes and this kind of a leak. Because in hash map, you have an object without a hash code. Well, by default, it will be calling, that's okay. But we don't know if the next time when you have the same object, will we get the same hash code or not? We can have a doubling over there, and equals can be also not working properly, and you will not get the proper results. Every time when you want to create your own class and when you'd like to add it to hash tables, hash lists, hash maps, you need to rearrange those two methods to make them working correctly, or you can face some leaks. As to the references, well, there are some strong references, soft references, etc. And if two classes are interlinked quite solidly, if there are some cross links, references, there'll be no deleted, not deleted from the memory. So, and the garbage collector will not collect it at any moment. It believes that there are some references, that those are the links. There are some statements as in a class, some classes inside. So if there is a link inside this inner class to the major class, well, those two will be living forever until you restart the whole Java machine. They'll be living together because they'll be referring to each other, and the garbage collector will not collect them at any time. And just imagine if you have an inner class and it is uploaded continuously. You have so many examples as you had launches, so that's just crazy. As to the threads, well, thread-independent development, that's quite difficult. In Java, it's especially difficult, but you need to proceed it in the proper mode, because it can be quite dangerous. As I said, this could be a weapon of mass destruction, because in one thread, you can have so many elements that it will just crush, and the main thread will also be crushed, and then you'll get a cascade. You can just break down the whole service. And sometimes threads are competing for the same variables. You should not forget about it. Then some key fields are also there, and it is written in the Java theory, and I recommend you to read all that. Now let's talk about data leaks with the JVM in Domino and Nodes. Well, they're quite different from Java itself. We have JVM for HTTP for server 1, for plugins, for ASGI. They have some own examples. So when OSGI plugin is down, then HTTP server will be working. I can't say that about the server, but when the server 1 is down, then the parallel server 1 will be working as well, because they are launched as a jar agent. They have a separate memory. So to avoid this kind of leaks and agents, you have to use a recycle for all Lotus objects, especially in cycles, in loops. If you get some documents in a loop, then you have to get a recycle for a document. Because if you write get next documents in the one variable, then you open handle each and every time on the native object C on Java machine, and the previous one are in the memory still. So before writing in the new variable, you have to delete the old one. There is a link, a separate link, and I'll also indicate it, how to get such kind of a template. In Java, there are some templates, and they allow us to develop quite fast. So the agent launch, it's a kind of a team, Java agent and agent name .jar. If you get a Java agent in a designer, you save it. And then if you open this design node with Connes and you get it to Excel, then you'll get the file of the percentage agent name .jar. And so you'll have the code of your agent, compiled one, and that one will be launched. So each time it is launched. So neither agents nor libraries can get jar files. It will result in data leaks, because every time you launch, all the jar files that are included in the agent library will be launched 3 times as well, because this is about start and stop for a Java machine. And well, you have external libraries and you can't be sure 100%. That's why you should get it on the server, because they will get, when the server is started, they'll get to you. Then you should not be using starting from for Lotus object, for nodes objects. Well, they will not go away. Until you restart your Java machine, well, they will not go away. And we also have some situations when class loader in Domino creates a data leak. When it uploads those libraries from a disk, or when it uses Java agents. Sooner or later, somewhere will be leaking, and it's very hard to monitor it. Well, a class loader has a separate category of data leaks. And people written their own class loaders, and they then reconfigured them to stop them from being created. As to Dde Setup, I'll show you quite fast. Over here, you have preferences file. And here you have a Java section, which is about the settings. You have a code style here, so all your developers can get a unified code style, what variables, how can they be used, what formats should be applied, how the inputs should be organized. You can also say which version of the library should be used by default. So here I have the 8th version, how to build, how to proceed with error, with the warnings. You can set up all this. You can also have the pointer access. So all this will be added to your agent or to a library. It will be highlighted, visualized. You can also get the error in here, so you can get to the null object. Then try with resource. Well, as to this one, just give me a second. On closed resources. In Java 7, we've got a try with resource nature. So if there's any error with the file is opening or something else, then your resource will be closed automatically. So you don't have to process this error by yourself. The file will be closed automatically. So it is appearing since Java 1.7. And so with the 8th version, we inherited the whole 7th things. Then you can have Javadocs. We can get editor the way you like it to see. We have a lot of settings in here. And we also have code templates. Maybe they're here or not here, but somewhere else. Let me see. Well, I think I've lost them, but they should be somewhere in here. There is a method how to create templates fast, and they would allow you, as we do it, control space. I'll show you how I do it. So for reach, for example, and it is done like this instantly. And you can also get your own one, for example, DC, something else, iterate, and you can get such a loop for your documents initially with your recycles. So you don't have to do it manually. You create it once and that's it. Well, fortunately, I've forgotten when you can have it, can get it done. Very sorry for that. Okay, we will not waste our time in here. I'll get it to you later. As to the GVM tuning, can it be tuned? Yes, it can, indeed. Over here, I'll show you, since we are working with Java, we have JD documentation SDK version 8. We have X options in here. We can also have some system property options through variables. Not all of them are working, I'll say from the very beginning. Some of them are not working and they are prohibited at the upper level, at the level of GVM. So we should have this document, IBM SDK Java Technology Edition 8. If you're working with version up to 11. If your version is higher than 11, then you have another document, Open J9. Well, this is actually all the same, but you can also use it. As to Java options, my server has been started with an option, which is through notice ini Java user options file. This is the root to it, the property, and this is the content. So I have UTF-8 encoding, and I have XMS 1000 megabytes, so 1 gigabyte, and I've also like to get C logs, GC logs, and I would like to have it in this folder, and they should have this kind of a format. So for 50 documents. And, well, that's where they're inserted. If I open it, that's the way it looks like. So GC log looks like this. You can also have the data from your Java machine and how it was working. You can also get this information from there. As to the heap analysis, GC logs, there is such a concept as a manager analyzer. It allows us to analyze heaps. I have a heap dump, and it showed me that I have some problem. Namely, I have some agent leak. Because jar file was attached and this error has been accumulated. So the gray area will be cleaned and the area above it probably is the source of my problems. We have a lot of options in here. We should just go one by one to understand how it all works. Well, something is not working for nodes, for Lotus, but something is not. Something is working, something is not. Then how to analyze in the log. We have plugin. I'll show you, just give me a second. We have GCMV. It is uploaded, downloaded separately. And with the help of this, we can open this GC log. And it'll build the information for you. It'll indicate the number of your objects. The finalizers are used in here. This is the technology of the garbage cleaning, garbage compiling and catching. A lot of information, a lot of analysis. And if you have it permanently, then you have a lot of logs. There will be quite big ones, and you'll be able to read them. Then Eclipse. Well, not only in Notes, but also in Eclipse, it could be done. Well, good idea, but there are some plugins. For example, Xpage SDK. As I said, also garbage collection and memory visualizer. I've just used them. Then we have IBO monitoring and diagnostic tools and health center. We have also decompiler. Please read the descriptions of the libraries, because if the library says that it cannot be decompiled, then it will be a violation of law. So you are risking a lot. Sometimes there are the out-of-box decompilers, but they cannot decompile all the libraries. So in Eclipse, you can decompile, but please be careful. Then Windows Builder also is available. We have also spot bugs, used to be find bugs, and SonarLimp as well, and it can enhance the quality of our code. For example, you can see in here, Windows Builder. That's how the window looks like. This is the source code, and I've written it in Eclipse. How did I do it? Actually, I haven't written it. I actually drawn it and then just reconfigured a couple of elements. SonarLint. This is a rule that is made by a human. So, for example, the system can tell you that this is a dead code and you can just delete it. Then some Java elements. What about SonarLint? Yes, we can open the rule, we can see the description, and that's how you can enhance the quality and the level of your development. Well, this is the good coding rules. You should not, for example, use some system conclusions, you should have some logs, etc. So we have some recommendations in here. That's probably it. The only thing that I wanted to show you, the last one, that I wanted to get to you, this is about server 1. Just give me a second. So it's been uploaded. Version 1, Java version. It says the commands that are there. We have such a command, tell RNUG divader. So for everybody who is a fan of Darth Vader, this is for you. This is just for fun, but you can do a lot of interesting things. You can have an alternative agent manager, or you can monitor your servers, how one of the enthusiasts have done with nodes. One participant to our forum. And you can also start your server with such a picture, some picture that, for example, it is supported by this company, this system, or these people. So that is basically it from my side. I haven't finalized my slide with all the references and links, unfortunately, but I'll do it. So that is it from my side, and now this is the time for questions and perhaps answers. Pavel, thank you very much for your presentation. We have one question from our participants, which is, could you show us how did you connect the JSON library within the table and the filters? Just a second, I'll show you. How did I do it? Just give me a second. Well, it's been proclaimed in here. I connected it through notes ini. So it is in this folder, djava. Those are my libraries in here. So I'll show you. Sorry, I have to switch between different windows. So with the client, through these variables, I connected it as a library. And then through Java user classes, ext, I got this variable, and that's how I got it in my designer. And then I had to reload my nodes, but here's the build path. libraries that are used. And we have any variable. This is what's responsible for the upload through nodes ini. So I have 4 libraries that are indicated in here. We have some libraries that are connected, libext, for example. And we also have a Jira system library. This is Java system that is executed. This is drawn from libex. And we have POI in here and all the libraries that are connected to them. So those are my 4 JSON, Google JSON libraries that are connected through nodes ini. And then over here we have our import. You can do it like this to get rid of all of this. So that's how it all imported and connected. And so they are available. And here we claim the object. So get JSON objects, and we have this type. Well, oh, this one is really tricky. List type. This is a special type of reflection. This is such a concept, reflection in Java. So you can reorganize your types. I've got an array. So from dust, I've got an array. First element, second, third, fourth, fifth. And inside, we have such fields. And to make them a list, I had to reconsider this type, to which type I should transfer them. And so I have now array list name, and Java independently, through reflection, it finds array lists, gets the class, it has been uploaded, and then we have the TMP variable that is used afterwards. Thank you very much, Pavel. And we have another question from one of our listeners. Good afternoon. Could you tell us, in Domino Designer, how to get the code for UTF-8 in Designer by default? Well, I used preferences. I get that it is somewhere in here in workspace, so you can change it in here, UTF-8. But you have some problems with other developers that have the CP 2051. So it can be quite difficult. If you transfer something, then you should transfer everybody. If it's an open source project, then the situation is that if it used to be 1251 and then you get to UTF-8 or 16, then you are taking a risk that you can just break the repository. Yeah, then we just click OK, apply, and we should have UTF-8 right now. Okay, thank you. So we don't have any questions from our audience in online. Pavel, thank you very much for your speech, for your presentation. It was a pleasure.